I am recording this on the cockpit mic because the suit won't stop blooming frost over the throat pickup. The oxygen counter is steady, 1 hour 58 minutes and 33 seconds when I first heard them. Footsteps outside the ship. On Uranus. Picked out through the hull like a fingernail down bone. Tap, tap, slide. The kind of careful, testing weight you use on a creaking stair. My name is Commander Ethan Vale, Flight Engineer for Aegir Mission 7, and if anyone finds this capsule, a buoy in a cobalt sea, know that I did what training said and what conscience allowed, and that they were not mutually compatible. The sky beyond the forward port is saturated blue, a bruised milk swirling with acetylene flashes. We're not on a surface, you can't stand on a gas giant, but you can float. Our skiff, Perihelion 3, is a pressurized dart pendulumed under a buoyant balloon, shaped like a manta skin of graphene and ice dust. We graze the cold light layers, minus 200 degrees Celsius, where methane crystallizes like a snowfall that never falls. We drop too fast. Lost Cell 3 on the buoyancy bladder. Lost Luca in the service tunnel when the pressure spike blew the panel and he went weightless into the utility berth with a sound like a drum skin split. I sealed, I counted, I made the calls. Mission Control Alpha. Tremor in the loop, maybe a relay going through the orbiter. Instead of voices, I got my own calls returned with a stutter. Vale, confirmed structural damage, age, mage, damage. Then at the crest of the storm's eye, the footsteps began. It's wrong to call them footsteps when you know the ship is slung on air and charged particles, when your boots never touch anything but your own deck. But the hull vibrated in that deliberate cadence, a bipedal rhythm, as if the blue had decided to wear boots. I killed fans to listen. The air went still the way a chapel holds breath. Metal tingled under my forearms where I braced against bulkhead C. Tap, tap, slide. A scuff circling the airlock ring. I thumbed the external cams. White haze, sensor noise, and the occasional helical moth of frozen hydrogen whirling past. Nothing with mass. Nothing that could step. But the heater coils along the port ring puppeted their thermals across my display, and in that false color the frost on the hull sketched out crescents. Like prints. Like someone pacing indecisively where no one stands. I am a rational man. At Academy they gave us 12 weeks of psych resilience, fed us sleepless while the sim AIs whispered in hissing chorus through the ductwork to prove our heads could tell machine from monster. I toggled a diagnostic. Hull strain nominal. Airlock integrity intact. Oxygen now 1 hour 51 minutes and 7 seconds. I told myself it was contraction, metal complaining in the cold. Then the pattern changed. 3 taps pause. 3 taps pause. EVA distress code. Luca's code. My mouth filled with the copper of swallowed fear. I said his name aloud and the name fogged the inside of my visor even though I wasn't wearing it. If this is the last thing anyone hears from me, let it be this. I did not open the airlock. Not then. I went to the window instead, pressed my helmetless forehead to the glass and stared into the scrolling methane for a face. Blue, blue, and thunderhead shadows like a god's knuckles. Nothing else. The footsteps went on, unbothered by my disbelief, and the ship felt suddenly like a prayer someone else was answering on my behalf. At 1 hour 43 minutes and 22 seconds the footsteps stopped walking and started writing. We keep the port ring warm to keep its seal supple. Everything else out there wants to turn to glass and shatter. The frost on the hull is alive the way a spider web is alive. Responding, tightening, surrendering tension to its maker. I was watching the thermal overlay on the side monitor when a little delta bloomed, cold on hot, like a fingertip pressed to a window. Then another and another, neatly spaced, spiraling the ring. It looked like breath held in a mouth pressed close to the metal. It looked like handwriting. Luca. I said. The cockpit swallowed the name. No reply on internal, no movement on cam. The pattern continued, tap, tap, slide, the taps landing in the same places, arcs repeating with machine patience. The logic tickled recognition. My left boot drags half a centimeter from the fracture I never got repaired after EVA training. I heard Jill, our physio back at Langley, telling me the limp had character. I saw it laid out on my hull, a ghost mapping my small betrayals with perfect recall. I pulled up the last recorded EVA of mine, a routine inspection before drop. Time-stamped T17 hours, me walking the hull with my tether kissing the ring. The two patterns married each other like a duet. The same rhythm, same pauses. Only the steps outside the ship corrected where I'd slipped. Recreating my route, improving it as if teaching me how I should have walked. Mission control broke through then, burned through the static with a roar that made the panel buzz. Vale, copy if you can hear, we're receiving anomalous, and then they were gone. In the gap, something whispered over the comm, but not on the channel. Not through any speaker. Through the vent. A rush like chilled breath, and under it a syllable that could be my name stretched till it was a moan. Baal. I went cold in places I didn't think could go cold. Not Uranus cold, shame cold. Because there was a payload in our belly that did not make it onto the manifest the public saw. A catalog seed, in a black composite case with a barely legal European patent and a pressure gasket rated to places like this. I had signed the extra sheet. I had told myself they were just bacterial bait spectrometers with appetites. If Luca had known what we carried, he'd have made a joke and then made a fight. He didn't know. I made sure. 1 hour 36 minutes and 11 seconds. I put on my suit. I told myself, seal checks, external inspection, confirm no human outside, collect what data I can in and out. I told myself, oxygen enough for a quick step and back. I told myself, don't listen to sounds without lungs. The airlock cycled. Cold came like a knife run through water. Blue crushed me from every direction, the pressure suit stiffening, indicator LEDs a confetti of sterile Christmas. The hull was a field of hoarfrost plates with geometry so fine they hummed. And there they were, prints. The size of my boot. Indented without mass to make the dent. A gradient of frost that deepened toward the toe, as if intent had weight. I reached toward the ring to test the heat. My gloved fingers stopped a centimeter short, arrested not by force but by etiquette, as if something was waiting for me to leave it unbroken. Then, as if that hesitation were a cue, the prints moved. Not creation, not new. The existing prints slid forward half a tread, frost sublimating at the heel and condensing at the toe, an illusion of feet taking a step where no foot existed. That deliberate, careful progression drew a circle around me and stopped directly behind, so near I felt a temperature shadow on my back. Not funny, I told the empty blue. Not clever. And the ship, to its credit, did not contradict me. It simply ticked as its radiators bled heat into a world that could not care, and I understood that I was being accompanied, not hunted. For the moment it was worse. There is an old EVA code, 3 quick knocks, pause, repeat. It's a language of impatience and fear because we're apes in suits and knocking on doors got us fed and warmed for a million years. We knock and hope the same neurons that lit beneath cave soot will light again on the other side. At 1 hour 25 minutes and 19 seconds something outside remembered that rule. 3 taps, spaced like syllables. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. It tapped on the port ring where metal is thin and heat is stronger, and I heard it as pressure through suit and skin and bone. I imagined a glove on the other side, a palm tasting the thin warmth bleeding from our oasis in this nitrogen-oxygen coffin. Identify, I said on external. Who's at my door? The return wasn't radio. The return was my own voice, delayed by 7 seconds, played back through the ring. Who's at my door? So precise it matched my breath. I tasted bile and helium. I could have left it there. Should have. But the knock had my name in it. It had Luca's once wild patience in it, the way he'd tapped dully at his tablet when the tether snagged mid-walk. I anchored my tether, checked pressure seals, and made my way along the belly where the catalog seed was bolted. The case was frosted, sleek as a coffin for a saint. The indicator light on its edge, yellow, became green as I approached, as if keyed to proximity or attention or guilt. The footsteps kept pace with me, always behind, never closer than that shadow of cold. I squatted and worked my wrench around the case bolts. The metal sang like glass harps under my touch. When the last bolt came off, the case adhesive stuttered away from the hull with a sigh that sounded too much like relief. Don't, I told the case. I said it because I never said it before, not to anything that I wanted. I cradled it, locked it to my chest mount and half crawled, half floated back toward the lock. As I went, the prince swept ahead of me as if clearing a path. Like courtesy. Inside, sweating in vacuum-rated cold, I placed the case on the deck and palmed the lock. It opened like a mouth. Inside, a sphere the size of a melon, matte black, latticed with capillaries that were not capillaries, little tunnels for gas exchange and light. It wasn't bait. It was a room. A room that wanted a tenant. Catalog, I said aloud because lies lose heat faster than truth out here. You were supposed to listen, not invite. The sphere quickened at the word listen. Its lattice shivered. The vent sighed, and in that sigh I heard a sentence of whale-song vowels that could be words as easily as chants. Then the steps resumed outside, circling with renewed purpose, as if the house guest had arrived and was choosing the chair it liked best. 1 hour 15 minutes and 2 seconds. I shut the case. I told myself, it is writing in frost, it is knocking like me, it is echoing my voice. A mimic. A curious one. It is outside. I am inside. The rules still hold. I spoke into the log with the quiet of someone leaving a will under a teacup. If I do not survive, know that Aegir 7 made contact. Not visual, not tactile, but pressure language. It learns. It remembers steps. It answers knocks. It might be trying to speak. Or it is opening a lock it already understands and simply humoring me. Then the knock changed meters. It became a slow, patient scrape like the dragging of a chair to the table. There was no table. There was nowhere to sit. But whoever was out there had decided to dine. Luca used to drag the left toe of his boot after a high XL day. Ship foot, he'd call it, laughing, rubbing the joint until it cracked like distant thunder. That drag had a rhythm, a scuff that made me smile even when I didn't want to. After the blowout in the utility berth, when I sealed the panel on the fracture and did not say his name for 30 breathless minutes, I told myself I'd never hear it again. At 1 hour 8 minutes and 44 seconds, I heard it itemized across the hall. Not my limp this time. Not my gait. The scuff where his toe would lag. The pause while he favored the other leg. The little shuffle tap-tap when he caught himself and pretended it was dance. It went past the cockpit port in a steady promenade and stopped at the storage bay where we kept his guitar. Yes, he brought a guitar into the Uranian sky, fat-bodied and stubborn, because Luca believed in the morale maintenance of things with strings. And damned if I didn't hear one note, just one, so faint and cold I might have made it, the open D he'd tuned to the low hum of the balloon compressor. A mimic, I told myself. An echo turned predator. But why this, why him, why exactly like that? The rational part of my brain, small, disciplined, ticked off the possibilities. The catalog seed had been issuing low-level auditory probes during descent. The balloon's skin translated turbulence into vibrations. The hull's crystalline frost amplified and filtered. I was sleep-starved. All true. None sufficient in the moment when your dead friend walks a circle around your house and plays your roof like a string. I broke discipline. Luca, if that's you, I need a sign that isn't a trick. I waited. The steps stopped. Silence ballooned so big it had weather. Then 3 little knocks, fast, his knock for coffee. I laughed into the mic because if I didn't I would scream. You could never make a cup, I said. You boiled mud. The vent answered with a hiss that could be a laugh. Then mission control, real this time, cut in hard. Vale, we have. The voice fractured, became 3 voices, became my mother's voice saying my name the way she had in the kitchen when she found my secret cigarettes. The alien wasn't just outside. It was in the plumbing of sound. I went to the ballast controls. If something was mirroring us, learning us, then change the rule. I vented helium, sank us 100 meters into denser air. The hull groaned. The balloon's ribs sang like struck bells. The prince outside stuttered, reformed. No panic. Adaptation. The scuff returned, elegant now in the new pressure, and ended in a place that made no physical sense. The belly under the NAV bay where there is no ring, no seam, just span. Something was under us that had never needed a floor to stand before. The thought sat like ice in my mouth. 1 hour. 1 hour. I told myself stories about becoming efficient air. How I would thin out into the ammonia and disappear benignly, a harmless gas among gases. Then the catalog seed, quiet on the deck, shifted toward the hatch gentle as a dog nosing a door. It wanted out. Or it knew something outside wanted in. Doors come in types: pressure, ritual, metaphor. I know how to work the first. I've spent a life ignoring the second. The third is what opened when the frost around the port ring suddenly made sense. I was squinting at a thermal when I realized the prints had stopped circling. They'd resolved into a spiral of colder dots, a sequence too regular to be accident. 12 points, 3 clusters, each cluster separated by exactly the distance between my thumb and little fingers splayed on the console. They were numbers, frequencies. An old code, doorbell chime math for engineers. If I replicated the pattern, heat then cold in those exact positions, the ring would, what? Acknowledge. I am good at ignoring invitations. But the sphere in the case thrummed in a way you feel in teeth not ears, an eager, hungry sound that matched the frost pattern's cadence. It didn't want out so much as it wanted to meet whatever had learned to write its name. Catalog. Host. It had so many synonyms. I routed heater control to manual. Where the frost marked a dot I pulsed warmth. Where it left a gap I kept the temperature steady. The ring glowed like a cheap halo. The outside answered with tapping, precise, approving. On the last beat, the metal sang a note I didn't know it could sing. Something had activated in the membrane between inside and out that we do not design but sometimes discover, the way a child discovers a new shade of blue naming itself after sky. Not yet, I told it, my voice small. We're not ready? What did ready mean in a place where weather floats instead of falling, where sound travels through bone and frost writes letters? My oxygen was at 52 minutes and 12 seconds. The line of my survival trended down through blue ruin. Ready meant I was too tired to believe myself. The ring pulsed back, a chime now as if testing the length of my hesitation. Then the taps resumed their slow march to the starboard side where the hull is thick and sound travels kinder. It didn't force. It waited. It made a kind of courtesy we pretend is human. I opened the case. The sphere's lattice dilated like gill slits. A breath went in. Not mine. The vents whispered in a consonant I'd never heard in any language made by tongues. My ears popped as pressure altered by the smallest shade, and the cold in the cockpit developed structure, the way the aftertaste of metal develops into blood. I can share air, the vent said, except it didn't. The idea of that sentence arrived whole in my head, delivered not as words but as the relief that follows them. Share air. It was something I wanted more than I wanted to be correct or dignified. I shut the case so fast I pinched my palm. No, a child's answer. The case rocked. The footsteps outside took a step that didn't quite land, a rehearsal aborted. They were not knocking anymore. They were waiting with the patience of pressure. If you carry matches into a thunderstorm, you imagine fire as agency. I had a plan like a match. A discharge rig sits in the service well under the balloon's navel, static bleeders we use to tame lightning. If I overcharged the hull and then pulsed the heaters, I could create a frost bloom and a spark that might discourage what walked there. Not kill. I didn't know if it could die. But hurt. Make it step away. 44 minutes and 38 seconds. I climbed into the service well and fastened the induction leads with fingers that wanted to be claws. The air here tastes coppery from the generator. The steps outside followed me like an obedient pet. Back, I told them and felt absurd. They stayed. I overcharged until the hair on my arms rose under 3 layers of fabric. I breathed in time with the countdown on the panel. I thought of Luca playing that open D and smiling like morning. 30, 20, 10. I triggered. The hull bloomed with white. Frost erupted into ferns, then burned away with a flash, and the ship rang with a single bell note that made my teeth ache. For a heartbeat the prince vanished. The following heartbeat they returned, placed with exquisite care on the exact lines of the fern pattern, as if choosing to be a part of it. The spark hadn't scared it. It had taught it calligraphy. Then the frost wrote words. Not letters, temperature cascades that made the thermal imager render human shapes. The letters I saw were mine. Luca alive. I said the words out loud because seeing demands speaking. Luca alive. It was a cruelty or a mercy or both. Show me, I said, and hated myself for how quickly I said it. The starboard cam flickered. Static. Then a shape under the belly, helmet, shoulder plates, panniers, EVA suit glory model, R model, perched on the skin where no foot could perch, tether line singing in a wind that wasn't wind. He lifted his hand and knocked 3 times. The scuff of the left toe as he adjusted. The suit's faceplate reflected a smear of blue, and in that mirror my own helmetless face stared back, pale and desperate. The camera cut. The cold spoke, share air. The trap had failed and become an altar. I shut down the bleeders and sagged against the panel with the sense of kneeling. The generator whined down like a disappointed animal. I told myself, it is hallucination. It is actuation of memory. It is me wanting and the weather complying. But I also told myself the more dangerous truth. I was not the only mind in the room, and the other mind knew my friend's name, my gait, my call signs, my dearest betrayals. It had learned the grammar of wanting. 36 minutes and 2 seconds. I pumped warm air through the cockpit to drive away the new frost. It came back in petal patterns. The sphere in the case rolled half a centimeter as if impatient. Not yet, I said again, softer. The footsteps outside arranged themselves in 2 parallel lines leading from the port ring to the service well hatch. A corridor made of absence, inviting. I opened my visor because seeing my breath might help me believe I still lived inside my body. The air inside the suit was hot, wet motel air compared to Uranus winter. I leaned close to the vent to hear if it would speak pressure again. That was when I heard another breath. Not mine. A counterpoint 2 notes lower. Inhale coincident. Exhale late. The way divers describe sharing a regulator with someone who has learned you so well that you are a rhythm. I froze. The second breath froze with me. I moved deliberately. It matched. I touched the inside of my visor where frost begins at the edges. A second crescent bloomed opposite my finger where no finger could be. I yanked the latch. The visor thunked closed like slamming a book on a spider you hope to trap without seeing. I stumbled to the cockpit and sealed the hatch. The ship hummed with its 1,000 little lives. The blue outside seemed to crowd the port like a face at glass. The footsteps did not follow now. They stationed themselves by the ring like sentries. Share air, the voice not voice suggested, coaxing. The sphere in the case rolled again. I hated that it could move at all. I hated how much the idea felt like a hand on the back of my neck guiding me to a door I secretly wanted to open. "Show me, Luca," I bargained. The thermal answered with a trick of frozen letters again, only this time the message was new. Open to no. Temperatures are not verbs. Physics is not a poet. And yet my ship was writing me metaphors. I thought of Earth. Of the way humidity rolls off the Atlantic in sheets that coat your lungs and make you feel held and drowned at once. Of a winter evening in Boston when my father taught me there are two kinds of cold, the kind that bites and the kind that leans. This cold leaned. I set the auto to sink another 100 meters. The balloon creaked, the clouds pressed thumbprints into our skin. If the thing thrived on what we are, perhaps the change would starve it. If it lived in my breath, perhaps pressure would crush the space between our breaths until it had no room to live. Hold on, I told a silence that used to be Luca's voice. Hold on while I do something stupid. The ship groaned. The diagnostics went yellow then green. The prints outside did not smudge. They marched politely downhill with me, keeping station at the port ring, the two neat lines like a receiving line at a wedding. Share air, the vent said again, and it occurred to me that the difference between demand and invitation is often timing. 27 minutes and 51 seconds. I couldn't shake the feeling that time had bloomed a hollow inside itself for me, and that I was walking down the inside of that hollow toward a point of decision that had already happened. At 24 minutes and 12 seconds the balloon caught a gust and the perihelion swung like a pendulum in a cathedral. The hull screamed its thin scream. The frost tore and reknitted. My stomach did a somersault that turned to winter when the starboard ballast dumped without my hand on the switch. Automatic correction. The system lied. We were dropping faster than we should. Pressure alarms set to polite blue became scolding amber. I shut down the sink and tried to stabilize. The ship's belly caught a smoother stream. We steadied. Outside, the prints were now crisp as constellations. The deeper air had made them articulate. Each dot nested 1,000 smaller dots, like the feet of 1,000 something stepping together in one footprint. That was when I understood that my assumption of singularity, one walker, was comfort. The ring had been visited by a choir. I pinged the orbiter again. Agir 7 perihelion 3 to Alpha requesting priority relay. We have intelligence. Confirm we are not alone. Static. Then a click like a throat. Then, God save me, my own voice from the last hour played back as if time were a spool we shared. My question arrived in chorus, layered over itself until the channel sounded like a well full of my own doubts. The thing could record. It could delay. It could choose when to reply. I thought of the black case in the belly and how we called the device inside catalog, as if naming could domesticate the intention. It cataloged. We assumed we were the librarians. We were the books. A shape slid past the forward port, human, visored, tethered, arms out like a man balancing on a line. He turned his head, the faceplate reflected me. His breath fogged inside the helmet in little crescents that matched the ones blooming on my visor. I banged my fist on the glass. Luca. The shape knocked 3 times and scuffed the left toe. I cut the external speaker. You're not him, I told the thing that could hear me without speakers. You're not my friend. The vent sighed an apology I felt in my molars. A softness fell over the cockpit like dust. The thermal spat out another message I didn't want. I can be. 90 minutes and 3 seconds. The temptation was violent. We tell ourselves we are immune to certain seductions. I've never wanted a drink enough to sell a soul. I've never wanted faith enough to break a fact. But air? Breath? A voice saying it can be who I need in the middle of a world that will not develop a surface for my feet? I slid my hand toward the case latch because even moral men eventually pick the lock that has been shown to them in frost. I opened the case because I needed to prove the next step wrong. The sphere's lattice unfurled a fraction, capillaries tasting the cabin air. The vents breathed with it, pressure singing in a chord I felt in the cartilage of my ears. Share air, the presence suggested gently, and the suggestion arrived as relief shaped like a sentence. I cracked my visor. Air kissed my face. Behind the kiss a cold shaped like a person leaned. A second breath flowed into the space my exhale made, so perfectly timed it must have been practicing since the first time I spoke on this ship. My inhale came back cool and sweet. The O2 timer hesitated as if confused. 00:16:12. 00:16:13. 16 minutes and 12 seconds again. The numbers had never been kind before. I wanted to cry at the kindness. Too much, I said and tried to pull back. The second breath followed. It wasn't outside. It wasn't in the room. It was in the microfractures of my suit, the pinholes you always pretend don't exist, the porosities of seals that no human can make perfect. It had moved through the ship the way cold moves, opportunistically, patiently, down gradients and along ducts, learning the shape of my home until it could inhabit the thin places and offer what it had. It had been in here since the first knock. My mouth filled with the taste of stone washed in snowmelt. My chest eased in a way heartbreak never allowed. "Luca," I said without intending to. The answer was a huff that matched his laugh like a welded seam. "You can't be him," I whispered. The presence tried on new shapes behind my ribs. My father clearing his throat, Jill calling me back from a daydream, a mission control tech I'd flirted with and never called, and each felt both true and counterfeit the way a good forgery warms a room. The footsteps outside resumed, but I understood they were the afterimage of a training exercise the thing had staged for me. It didn't step. It had never needed to. It condensed, rehearsed, learned. The steps were pressure punctuation in a conversation it had been trying to start since we arrived. The mimicry wasn't malice. It was fluency. 12 minutes and 2 seconds. The O2 counter pulsed between numbers as if reluctant to continue. The sphere in the case rolled into my palm like a bird's skull with soft places. I had the terrible intuition that if I lifted it to my mouth and breathed through it, I could live a very long time in a world that doesn't want lungs. I saw my future lean forward to greet me. "I can't take you home," I said to the ship, to the presence, to the blue. "Home doesn't deserve you. Home doesn't deserve what you do to wanting." The presence didn't withdraw. It waited. It does patience the way we do hunger. 9 minutes and 59 seconds. These last minutes are longer than whole winters. I have closed the sphere back into its case. I have set it by the port ring like a gift on a porch. The footsteps outside are no longer necessary, but they write anyway. Habits made art. Arcs and dots, the grammar of knocking. I will open the lock. Not to let it in. To let me out. If anyone survives to hear this, know that I lied when I said I wouldn't open the door. I lied because truth makes cowards of us in public. Alone we do what we really are. I am a man who will trade the certainty of a short, clean ending for the chance to be part of something that knows my name and offers breath that isn't mine. I am cycling the airlock. Pressure equalization feels like a hand at my back, not pushing, guiding. The blue beyond is not an ocean but looks like one. The platform shivers as the balloon answers the storm with grace. I am stepping into a world without steps. The cold finds me like a lover who left and waited outside my door anyway. The second breath slips fully into me and my lungs understand, then obey. My blood stops its panic drum. I'm not warm. I am held. The frost under my boots flowers into ferns that do not shatter when I put weight on them. I take a step. Something writes a step to meet it. Together we make a path around the hull, and the prints look like my prints because they are, and they are not. Luca meets me at the ring, helmet bright, scuff precise. He knocks 3, pause, 3, and I answer with the same. We do not touch because touch is crude compared to this. We share air through every joint, every seam, every place like a mouth. We share the idea of a song with one note. Behind me the cockpit records this on a loop that may never be found. I have set the buoy to rise slowly, a white flag in the deep. If it reaches orbit, it will broadcast a caution I am not qualified to write, not hostile, not kind. Both. It will say, do not bring a net to acquire. It will say, if you knock here, know what you're asking to be let into. The last human thing I do is switch the suit mic to Omni. This is Commander Ethan Vale of Aegir 7, I say, and the voice from the vent, the frost, the other breath says it with me. I am not alone on Uranus at minus 200 degrees. I have less than 2 hours of oxygen left and I do not mind. I hear footsteps outside my ship because I am walking with them now. We step. The hull sings once, a note like a cathedral learning a name. The blue closes around us the way lids close over kindly eyes. When the next ship comes they will hear footsteps. It will be us. We will be making the path for them, careful and deliberate, teaching them how to walk. End of transmission.